This is Mark Guerrero. Welcome to East L.A. Music Stories. My guest is Bobby Navarrete, who is lately being referred to a little more as Robert Navarrete, correct?
Yes.
Okay. He's got a long musical story and activist story. It's very interesting. And he's best known for being saxophonist with Tierra during their heyday, their peak, when they had their hit together, and he did those major tours, and later played with the Midniters from what year did you say? 1991?
1991.
Yeah, to the present, and
Yes.
tons of other stuff to talk about. But let's just get started here. So, Bobby, welcome.
Good to be here. Thank you, Mark.
Okay. You're a fantastic sax player and musician. And what attracted you to the sax? And was there musicality in your family?
Well, I'm going to say that my brother, Richard, my older brother, heavily influenced me probably to follow him to learn the clarinet because he started before me. We became members of the school band at Abraham Lincoln High School. And then, of course, we're being told, well, guys, you can play sax too. If you can play clarinet, you can play sax.
But your dad or uncle is any
My
musicians?
dad, not so much. He sang around the house. My mother probably really encouraged us. She recognized our talents when we got school instruments.
So once you started playing the sax and started getting into music, what were your influences musically? What artists did you like? What sax players did you like?
Well, we started getting gravitating toward the soul music of Junior Walker and also King Curtis. And those two sax players are very prominent in the way they play their solos. Very
Shotgun,
soulful,
Junior
funky.
Walker, right? Shotgun.
Yes, and my brother was writing out. He was learning how to do takedown, so he was taking down the actual note for note solo of Shotgun. And then we discovered the Jazz Crusaders,
Oh, wow.
and we really got we oh man we would go to the lighthouse. We were learning the solos. We are learning the horn lines, and subsequently, of course, James Brown had a good horn section, and he had
Wow.
a good sax player.
Absolutely.
I think a couple of sax players, Maceo Parker, one of them. So we're learning the James Brown solos, but we're also aware that we're good reading musicians. We could play anything from Italian waltzes to a Mexican polka.
Right.
Reading it, we got together musicians who really weren't following music on paper like we had, but they had good ears. You've experienced a lot of musicians with good
I
ears.
myself, mainly a head
Yeah.
musician, as we call it.
Uh-huh. And so we started playing with the, I guess you would call them the garage bands.
Of course.
Were everywhere, and they were everywhere.
Yes.
Everybody wanted to have a group.
Where were you living at that time? Were you in East
Ramona
LA?
Gardens Housing Project over
Ramona Gardens?
Ramona Gardens.
That was
And
hardcore projects, man.
yeah, not too far from Hazard Park. Well, of course, the barrio was called Big Hazard.
Hmm.
And we went to Murchison Elementary to begin with, close by, and then we went to Abraham Lincoln High School, 7th through 12th grade. And we continued to play in the band program. We were exemplary models. We were considered probably two of the best musicians, leaders of Lincoln High School, my brother Richard and I. Yeah.
So what was the first band you joined, outside band outside the school?
The very first band was the Vibratones, and they were based out of El Sereno City Terrace. And of course, we had to do Night Train, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
remember learning those
Oh, yeah.
learning those sax parts. And my brother and I, we mastered it pretty good. That was the one we played with that band a lot. Was the Vibratones? Was
There was a
Night
lot of
Train?
instrumentals back in the days. Remember last night?
Yes, we did that one.
Some
Uh-huh.
cool little instrumentals, man.
Oh, there was a lot of good stuff.
course, Wild Weekend. Remember Wild Weekend?
Yeah, yeah. And then Harlem Nocturne. That was a big
Oh, yeah.
challenge for him.
Yeah. So you played with them for a little while, and so you were actually playing in bands starting in the 60s, right?
Yeah, pretty much. My brother and I were like 13, 14 years old, and we're starting to play with these side little garage bands. And then my brother Richard, he was in ROTC. He was thinking about joining the Marines and all that, but uh, him and I kind of like we did a little minor kind of a parting of ways, but he was still playing in the school band, and all of a sudden I was asked to play with Little Ray and the Progression.
Oh, wow. That was next, huh?
That was an excellent.
Now that was obviously a great band, and Little Ray, phenomenal singer, performer, R&B guy. And that was one of the absolute, along with the Midniters, they were probably the most popular bands at the time.
Oh
So,
yes, and you know that they and this was also his brother Robbie. We used to call him Robbie, Robert. Him and Ray, they envisioned a Mexican American Motown.
right. Well, remember he even created the Little Ray Review with the
Yes,
Orclips
Little Ray.
and the Epics and the Rayettes. It was a whole review
Yes,
of background
yes.
singers.
Man, we would back them up.
Unbelievable. Were you playing with them too, the review?
Yes, we would back them up.
So did you
I
play any?
remember one show in Delano.
You played in Delano?
We played in Delano. We went in a hearse. I don't know why bands used to take hearses
Because you can
around.
get more equipment in them. But
We're riding in a hearse to Delano to
well,
play.
Delano is Little Ray's hometown.
Yes, yes, that's what we
Did you
found
guys play
out.
any of the rock and roll shows at East L.A. College? Did you
Uh,
play? I know they did.
I,
Did you play with them there?
you know, I never did the rock and roll shows with them at the East L.A. The ones that were made famous by Taggart,
Right.
but I was never in any of the shows myself.
Did you attend some of them? If you didn't play in them, did you
No,
attend? You didn't even go to any.
not even attended a single
Wow.
rock and roll show.
Okay. So how long did you play with Little Ray and the Progressions?
I'm going to say 2.5 years,
Wow.
probably more like about 2 years.
Were you also in the band when they had Clarence Playa?
Clarence Playa had just kind of gone in separate ways.
Okay.
There was a parting of ways, so he wasn't
Okay.
with Ray now at that time.
So do you have any other memories of playing with Little Ray and the Progressions? Any other particular venues that stand out?
We went to Calexico and did the Armory. We were moving around a little bit out of East LA. It wasn't always just East LA. And Ray was like becoming to me, as big as the Midnighters.
No, they were pretty much on a par as far as being good and being popular.
Yes, he had that recording of "I Who Have Nothing,"
Right. Fantastic record.
and that helped him also. But he didn't have an album like the Midnighters had.
He never
They
made
had
an album
that
to my knowledge. I mean, until recently, but back in the 60s,
Yeah,
70s. But made a lot of singles with different companies,
that's
including
right.
major
He had,
labels.
I look at that one, Karen. He had one
Yeah.
called Karen.
That was on, I
Yeah,
think, the Pharaoh label, one of Eddie Davis's labels.
Pharaoh.
But he
Yeah,
was also on Atco, Atlantic.
I remember
Um, that was I Who Have Nothing was on that label.
that. Okay.
Did you play venues with Little Ray, like typical Big Union, Little Union,
Yes, did
kind of
did that
deal?
that whole
The circuit?
yes, did that circuit.
Cool. So were the Fabulous Sounds the next group you were in?
That would be the next group that I would join up with, and four of us at 1.5 were all the horn section. We're all from Lincoln High School.
And was it basically like an R&B based band or mainly?
It was an R&B based band with that heavy emphasis on the James Brown horn style.
So did you guys completely ignore the British invasion, or did you do an occasional Rolling Stones song or something?
We didn't do any of the British invasion. We were considered a soul, quote unquote, soul band.
Well, as you remember, in East LA, there were bands that just stuck to the R&B soul, doo-wop,
Yes,
and
yes.
others that did both, like my band, Mark of the
Oh yes.
Escorts, the Men from Sound, the Ambertones, even the Midnighters did an occasion. Well, they did
Oh
some
yeah, they
Rolling
did
Stones,
occasionally.
Beatles. So it was kind of split. There were those that would play British Invasion. Some didn't. They were so married to the R&B thing.
Barrett Jarvis. And of course, the bands were playing the 50s, the little bit of the honky tonk, the Bill Doggett thing, with
Right.
Harlem Nocturne,
Yeah, right.
and then of course you had the Chuck Berry guitar
Right.
sound. Yeah, that was very strong.
And virtually all
Uh,
the bands had an R&B component. I mean,
oh yes,
we played James Brown stuff and Stax
Mhm.
Volt and Motown as well.
Stax Volt, yes.
Yeah.
All the soul singers like Tyrone Davis and Joe Tex. We used to play Joe Tex music.
Sam and Dave,
Sam and Dave, okay.
Wilson Pickett.
Yeah, Wilson Pickett.
But I'm just saying, I've said this before, is it was amazing at that time how you had Motown, Stax Volt, James Brown happening at the same time as the British Invasion and Bob Dylan,
Yes,
Beatles and Stones, at the
amazing.
same time as Sinatra was on the same
Same
stations.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a few flyers here of the band you were in, the Fabulous Sounds. At the time, my band, Mark and the Escorts, had evolved into the Men from Sound. We changed our names, changed a few members, but it was always the same core of a drummer and bass player, Ernie Hernandez and Rick Rosas, and me. And people came and went. But at this point, 66, we were the Men from Sound. And here's a flyer from November 18th, 1966, Montebello Ballroom. And it's with the Fabulous Sounds, the Apollos, the Men from Sound, the IBMs, and the Exotics. And the Exotics were a great band. They were one of our big rivals all through Mark and the Escorts and the Men from Sound. So do you remember that gig in particular?
I think I do. Because I do remember the Montebello Ballroom several times playing there.
Mhm. Yeah,
Had to climb those long stairs.
absolutely. And then here's one from like a week later, it looks like. Let's see, what's the date here? November 12th? It's either the week before or the week later. I forgot already. But it's Heidi Ho presents another tough dance. Remember when tough was a cool word to say?
Yeah,
Hey, that's tough, man. That was like
yeah,
saying nowadays you say it's fly or it's dope. That
yeah.
time, hey man, that's tough.
That's tough.
Okay. Featuring Good Time Charlie, the Apollos, the Fabulous Sounds, the Men from Sound, Righteous Rhythms, and the IBMs. Kennedy Hall.
Oh my God.
Yeah, you obviously remember the Kennedy Hall.
Yes, played there many times.
Yeah, right on Atlantic Boulevard, right across the street from St. Alphonsus Church and
Yes,
close to
yes.
and the St. Alphonsus Auditorium where we all used to play. Okay, so those are the two flyers that I have for my band, the Men from Sound, are on the bill with you guys. But here's one where we are not on it, and it's at Lincoln Park Gym, September 30th, 1966. The Ambertones, the Enchantments, the Night Riders, Exotics, Prophets, Fabulous Sounds, Delighters, Essence, Enchanters, Centurions, and Knacks, plus Little Roman. 2 stage setups for continuous music. Isn't it amazing though how many groups would be on the bill?
Yes, yes.
That's like what's that? That's 11 groups.
That 11 groups is amazing.
I mean, how did we get on and off stage? Well, here you had 2 stages, but a lot of shows you had to tear down and set up, and there was a gap. Here's another one. This is October 8th, 1966, Big Union Hall, the Midniters with Willie G, the Prophets, the Impalas, the Apollos, the Fabulous Sounds, the Runabouts, and the IBMs. It's hard to for you to recollect this exact gig. Maybe you do, but I'm sure you remember playing with them at the
Yes, I
Big
do.
Union.
There were so many that, yeah. I do recollect the Kennedy Hall and the Big Union quite a bit, though.
Yeah.
Those two.
Here's another one at the Union Hall, the Big Union. This one features the Midniters with Willie G, the Coasters, the Shirelles, Prophets, Runabouts, Ambertones, Fabulous Sounds, August 12th, 1967. Did you say you might have backed up one of these groups?
Yes, possibly the Shirelles.
Do you remember the Ambertones? I'm sure you do, right?
Yes. Matter of fact, they used to rehearse around the corner. We were like rehearsing on Avenue 26 near Figueroa, Paul Trujillo's house. And around the corner, the Ambertones were rehearsing. I remember that.
Yeah, you're a very good band as well.
Yes.
Okay, and this is the last flyer that I have, and it says Roosevelt High School Auditorium, rock and roll show, Cannibal and the Headhunters,
I remember that.
the Soul Hunters Band, the Enchantments, the Fabulous Sounds, the Royal Mixtures, the Delighters, the Millionaires, the Enchanters, the Essence, Art and the Fabulons, the organizations. It's pretty funny. And Little Roman. I mean, again, how do you fit all those
Good God.
bands in one bill?
We always
That
did
one,
it,
you
huh?
must remember that Roosevelt gig, don't you?
I sure do. That was one of our, I guess that was one of the more heralded shows you would put on your resume if you would talk about your performances. Yeah.
So what happened after the Fabulous Sounds?
I was gonna decide to go to LA City College, but I was still playing with the Fabulous Sounds. They were going through some changing of personnel. And then we were asked to play with the Young Hearts. I think that was about 1968, early
And
68.
what were they like? Where were they
They,
from?
they they were like a Temptations style R&B singing group.
Was it an African American group?
Yes, they were an African American group. Sometimes one of the announcers would promote them as the Temptations of the West Coast, the Young Hearts. And we did that circuit, what they call the Chitlin circuit.
How'd you get involved with them?
I think it was actually a combination of Bubbles, the African American baritone sax player that played with the Fabulous Sounds and the
Oh,
Progression.
oh, got it.
He had a conversation with somebody from the Young Hearts, or they noticed that it could have been they noticed that we were playing a show with our horn section and they liked the horn section and they wanted to put a horn section with their group. And their recordings were I Got Love for My Baby, Somehow I'm Not the Same, and then they had also recorded a remake of Misty.
Hmm.
And most of them had strings. You didn't hear real prominent horns, but you heard strings a lot. Little bit of flute on Misty, but nonetheless, I became the arranger. I arranged the horn parts for the horn section to play behind the Young Hearts.
So where were you said you played the Chitlin circuit. What were some of the venues you played and what areas?
I think one was called the Tip Top Club. That was in Inglewood. Marla's Memory Lane. That's near Lamert Park. Uh, Duto's Music Center. That was in Watts.
And you also mentioned the Watts Festival. Tell me about
And then what? This was, of course, they were having the Watts Festival after the riots as a
65.
way of unifying the community. We played the Watts Festival over at, I think it was Jordan High School, and James Brown, Four
Wow.
Tops,
Wow.
the Watts 103rd Street Rhythm Band. Uh, I mean, you name it. It was the cream of the crop of R&B. At the same time,
Yeah.
I was attending LA City College, playing with the Studio Jazz Band, the LA City College Studio Jazz Band, and they were doing competition for different colleges. And I'm thinking now, well, when I leave LACC, where should I go? But I was enjoying the LACC music program and then taking the liberal studies that you had to take to get your AA.
Right.
But I was playing in that studio jazz band all the time. I was playing baritone sax. And you name it, everybody was walking in and out of that place. Bobby Loya, Tony Garcia, even Jimmy Espinoza playing upright bass. And then some of the heavyweights from Cy Zentner's band, Louis Belson's band. There
Wow.
was even a guy, Bob Lanning, that played with Elvis. I mean, the heaviest guys in the industry are coming in there to play with the A band, the studio jazz band.
So what did that lead to?
And then subsequently, I'm looking at higher education. Don't really know if I'm going to stay at LACC for the full 2 years. And I get recruited to go to Cal State Long Beach by George Fernandez, a Lincoln Tiger. At the same time, they're trying to take me to go to Vietnam.
Of course.
I get the physical, and I'm thinking, I'm going to Vietnam. But then I got the educational deferment through the EOP program at Cal State Long Beach, which I was recruited again by George Fernandez, who later became a promoter. And I had a high lottery number. That was that time where if you had a high number, you were, oh no, you're not going, you're bumped out. You're not going to go to now.
Yeah. Same thing happened to me. I got that 2S deferment when I was at
Yeah,
college. And then I was 1A vulnerable for a year. And then the lottery came out and I was chosen number 324, luck of the draw.
yeah, yeah. And then I start my studies at Cal State Long Beach, 1969 to about 71, and form a Chicano band called the Two-Thirds Minority with my friend, fellow classmate over there, Mike Archuleta,
I know him.
and two other students, Dennis Donnelly. Eventually, my brother would also become part of that band, but we were considered the Chicano movement band of the harbor. And this is before Tierra was formed.
So it was a very activist related band, right?
Yes. And yet at the same time, they were good musicianship. We would do Three Dog Night stuff. We would do um, even Grand Funk stuff. I mean, we were adding horns to hard rock. And I think I was really enjoying throwing horns behind hard rock, like Chicago.
Well, that was a big thing for horn players when Chicago and Blood, Sweat, and Tears hit.
Yes.
Man, that was a whole shift.
Oh, we were like, we got to do this. We got to try this stuff. That's what we were doing. Two-Thirds Minority was like an experimental band in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
But I think we realized, okay, we have to do themes around Chicanos and unity. And some people weren't into that. So they didn't accept us the same way, because they wanted to hear the stuff that was on the radio. It was familiar and they would dance to.
Of course. That's
And
what,
we got into originals. That's what it was. We were
of
getting
course.
into
If you're
originals.
going to originals, no payday. You know,
Yep.
you just play in the
But
garage.
we're trying to make a mark. We're trying to show we're original. We're unique. We're not trying to sound exactly like everything you hear from the record.
The dilemma all musicians go through coming up.
Yes. It was about the time actually that I'm working in the community of Long Beach now that I got my BA. I'm working with summer youth program, working with after school, with the West Side Long Beach community, and also trying to keep the kids aware that there's a better life for you after you leave. You don't have to get involved in this gang stuff, the drug stuff. That we were becoming counselors. We're trying to reach out to them and eventually get them into college. If we could get in a graduation from high school, that would be a big achievement. So I really dug in with those kids in Long Beach, and would pick them up in a van that they provided through the East Long Beach Neighborhood Center, and I'd bring them over. I was teaching ballet folklorico because I had learned ballet folklorico in college from a special workshop that was held with the Chicano ladies. The ladies were the ones that needed male partners. So, hey, Bobby, why don't you become? Yeah, all right. I'm learning all of that.
The dancing too, huh?
A Mexican folk dance stuff.
Wow.
So I would teach the kids that, and a little bit of voice. And I'm realizing, give them recreational things. It was like three hours in the afternoon after school, and then you take them back to their community. And about that time, I'm starting to realize, you know what? I think it's time to go out maybe and put little groups together. And I started putting my own little things together because I had already left Two-Thirds Minority to work on my degree, finish my degree. I get a call from Rudy Salas.
So go on. So Rudy called you, and what happened?
So Rudy calls. I'm still working on my degree. No, actually, I'm working on my credential. I'm now going to Cal State Long Beach again to work on a single subject credential. I had gotten married in 1976. Nereida Santini from Puerto Rico. I mean, literally, my kids are Chico Ricans, Chicanos and Puerto Ricans. So during that time, I'm working on the credential. I get the credential, and then I sort of was going into that circle of Spanish and bilingual education now. And Cal State Dominguez Hills needed a Spanish teacher to teach ballet folklorico, which had learned, and I had been teaching to the kids on the west side of Long Beach. And I was also teaching a voice and a teatro at the same time. So this about the same time I joined Tierra. I mean, literally almost the same time.
So that
When Rudy
was,
calls and asks me,
now what year would you say that was?
1977.
7, yeah. So
Yeah.
just for the audience sake, the people that don't know, Tierra actually started in 1972
Yes.
and made the first album around then. And I was around because we shared the same manager, Art Brambilla.
Yeah, that's right.
We were recording at the same studio. And I'll just recite the members real quick. You know, Rudy Salas on guitar and vocals, Steve Salas lead vocal, Kenny Roman on drums, David Torres on keyboards and trumpet, Rudy Bub Villa on sax, and Conrad Lozano,
Yeah.
leader of Los Lobos, as on
Yeah.
bass.
Right.
So that was the original Tierra.
Uh-huh.
And you know, throughout the decades, people come and go. They've gone through a lot of great musicians.
Mhm.
There was another Tierra in between. They made an album called Stranded. Some other members involved there.
Yes.
Aaron Ballesteros was a drummer, and other people were in that group.
Yes. Yes, he
But
was.
consistently, Rudy always had great groups, you know, great musicians.
Oh, yes.
They were great. And so this is right after that, that you
Right
jumped
after that.
in.
Well, I came to the rehearsal, and I meet the whole band beside Steve.
You remember
And
who was in
Rudy.
it at the time?
And I meet Robert Zapata. He's playing drums,
Drums, yes.
and you know he has a pretty good voice, so he's even singing sometimes.
Mhm.
Steve Falomir on bass.
Okay. The late Steve Falomir.
Yeah, the late great Steve. And David Torres had come back to join
Wow.
Tierra again. He had left for a while. He went to that school back east.
Oh, yeah.
Was it Berkeley?
Berkeley,
School?
I think it was Berkeley. Yeah.
And he wanted to learn the Chapman stick.
Yes.
Yeah, but he
was
came back.
He was a fantastic musician, my God. And what a keyboard player.
He might have been the brains behind that first album, the debut
He
album.
certainly was a big part of it.
The creative force. And so
Trumpet, you have a trumpet player?
there was no trumpet yet, and Steve Salas was playing valve trombone.
Oh, wow.
So Steve and I would play like a horn section, but Steve
Okay.
also played timbales. And I even set up some congas. I played congas. And that band went into the Pasta House and stayed there almost 3 years.
I remember.
I think we were there 3 years straight. That edition of Tierra was the one that eventually recorded "Gonna Find Her,"
Right.
produced by Willie Bobo.
Right. And that's the one that Zapata was playing drums on.
And Zapata playing drums, and of course the other song that later on was put on the City Nights album, along with "Gonna Find Her," was "Time to Dance."
Mm-hmm. Speaking of Willie Bobo, Zapata told me that he left Tierra to join Willie Bobo.
Yes, Willie Bobo wanted him to play trap drums with his group.
That's pretty amazing. So
and he was showing Robert how to play that Latin style. You have to be real sparse. You don't play a lot.
A lot of
You don't
fills.
play the toms, right? You just play
Not too many fills.
Yeah, you're on the cymbal, hi-hat, not a lot of heavy kick. But Zapata he learned the process, and then all of a sudden he decides he's going to leave.
So who took his place in Tierra as a drummer?
And then about that time, a drummer that they had auditioned, Philip Marayag.
Oh, yeah.
He lived over on the west side, and they try him out, and they say, no, we want him to play. And that probably might have been the same time that Joey Guerra replaces David Torres.
And keyboards.
And that at that time, Andre Baeza comes in.
Who had been in El Chicano.
Yes, and gets a new
Guerrero.
lease on life. And still no trumpet.
Where was
And
Bobby
then
Lloyd?
Bobby Rodriguez comes,
Oh,
excuse me,
okay.
Dr. Bobby Rodriguez
Of
comes
course.
in and becomes a trumpet player with Tierra.
So he was a trumpet player at that time. Bobby Lloyd,
Yes.
did he come in later?
And then Bobby Loya comes in about the time we recorded together at Fiesta Record Studio, Roberson. And he records together. He records. I forget the other Zoot Suit Boogie,
Mhm.
and they eventually will be put on that album of City Nights. Of course, we began to get a management team of Monty Gardner, Stan Levy. I don't know if you ever heard of them.
No.
They were putting jazz concerts on called the Jazz Series, and they were having everybody from Willie Bobo to Stanley Clark, Ayrton, and Flora Purin, and they were putting on shows. And somehow got involved and formed their own label called ASI, Artist Services International. That's what they stood for. And Fiesta Records now, I don't know what kind of deal was worked out. Now Together is on ASI. And I think the flip side was Memories. I think.
That was a single.
Yes. And then subsequently, Rudy and Steve are shopping for the bigger companies, trying to get attention. And they discover Neil Bogart.
Before Neil Bogart, they made the City Lights album, didn't they?
Well, you're right.
Yeah. City
That
Nights. I'm
was
sorry. I'm holding it right
that
now.
was what was that label?
Well, let me look at it. ASI.
It was that's right.
So in other words,
Monty
what
Gardner
happened, you
Stanley.
guys recorded the single and then you recorded a whole album, which
Very good.
became City Nights. And what I heard from Rudy Salas and others was Tierra had won some sort of a sponsorship deal from, I think it was Coors Beer Company, and they got like 10 grand or something. And they decided very wisely, rather than just split it up, let's use it to record an album. And they used those funds to record this album.
I think it might have been actually Schlitz beer.
Okay. But anyway, that was a smart thing to do. You know,
Coors came later. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But he said that was a smart thing to do. I think most bands would have split up the money because, you know, most of us
Sure.
weren't rolling in dough at the time.
No.
But it was a gutsy move to go ahead and invest in themselves.
Was that under Anheuser-Busch? Was
I'm
Schlitz
not
under
sure. I don't drink beer, so I don't know if this,
it?
don't know much about beer. But so then apparently this thing started you know, getting some airplay, and they really pushed it, and they started selling it out of their
Yes.
cars or whatever, the gigs.
Yes.
Started getting
8
enough
tracks.
airplay to where it came to the attention of Neil Bogart, and that's where Neil Bogart comes in.
Yes, that's when they officially bought. I don't know. Is there a process that they buy?
Yeah, the masters, and
They buy the masters, and then they.
put them out. And then that's when everything started happening.
Yes.
So you were right there in the eye of the hurricane.
And you know, when you mentioned that ASI was that first album, yes, that was the first picture taken on City Nights showing the 54 Chevy.
Mm.
The Relas brothers from the Duke's Car Club provided that, Julio Relas. The view that I guess they wanted to have was the lights of the city.
Right.
That's why it was City Nights, right? So they took the picture at Laurel Canyon.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Which is what San Fernando Valley, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when the deal was signed with Neil Bogart and Boardwalk Records, might have been Steve, could have been both of them, but knowing Steve, he probably said, you know what, that's not representative of our roots, Laurel Canyon. We need a new picture.
So that's why a new picture was taken for the Boardwalk record?
So, yes, and that picture is flat top, way up there above Lincoln Heights, a little mountain right there,
Okay.
which really overlooks Los Angeles more.
Mhm. Leave it to Steve to be culturally correct there, you know?
It could have been that Neil Bogart also said with his team, okay, we need a new picture, we need this, we need that. Because if you see the two pictures, you see just how professional the second one really is.
Right. But let's talk about the first picture before we go on to the second picture.
Okay.
So the front cover of the City Nights record on ASI has only Steve and Rudy, one on each side of the car, with two ladies, one in the car, one sitting on the car. And on the back has a picture of the whole group with the city behind it. And you were already starting to get into the zoot suit look, right?
Yes.
So tell me what made you inspired you to do that.
I had a brown pinstripe on that one, which was the same brown pinstripe I used on the second photo.
Okay. What gave you the idea to do it of all the people in the group?
Well, the play Zoot Suit. And
Okay.
you know what, Mark? The first thing I said was, where are the live musicians dressed like Zoot Suiters? How come there's no live musicians playing, even if it's a little snippet?
Mhm.
And I asked the question and answer period where they let the audience ask questions. You know what? I don't know, was it Edward James Olmos or who? I said, you know what? What it really needed was some live musicians actually dressed up like Zoot Suiters playing. Then I find out that Dan Kuramoto, he did the music for it, but most of it was pre-recorded, and of course your father
Wrote most of those
featured
songs.
prominently.
Well, he wrote
Was
most
it-
of those songs. He wrote most of those songs in the 40s, and then Luis Valdez
Yes.
used them in it.
I mean, what a great time to put your father's music, you know. And then later on, Rudy and Steve are thinking about, you know what? Why don't we put Zoot Suits on? And we decided to go to a Western costume, try on Zoot Suits. And we're all trying them out. I find one that fits like a glove. I'm wondering if Steve and Rudy had found one, if they're still, going to go through with it. And all of a sudden they go, Bobby, wow, you look great. Hey, you're the Zoot Suiter. And I go, how about you guys? No, not far. They decided not to get the suits.
Well, the last 20 years or so, Dale Villavicencio has been the zoot suiter in Tierra.
And then Dale stepped in because Rudy felt like, well, that was such a strong identity,
Yeah.
the beacon kind of, that we need to have another Zoot Suiter.
Yeah, and Dale can rock a zoot suit as well.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, cool. So anyway, that was the City Nights cover. And then the other one, I don't have the album here. It's a different photo. And who were the ladies on that photo? Wasn't that lady Aida on there?
Okay, Aida Cuevas.
I can't remember. I think
She's
so.
the one in the back at the far end of the car,
Mhm.
in the back, posing with Philip Mattia, the drummer.
Mhm.
The woman in front with the real long dress next to Rudy, that's Juanita. I forget her last name. And then the blonde that kind of has her hand on my shoulder, that was Andre Baeza's wife, Pamela.
Oh,
That was Pam Baeza. They wanted to show the Zoot Suit prominently.
so they've always carried a zoot suiter in the band. It works really perfectly.
Well, yeah, at that point it was.
So the record Together takes off, becomes a major national hit. You guys go out on the road, and I know you played, I believe, the Houston Astrodome,
Yes.
Carnegie Hall. Let's talk about the Houston Astrodome. What do you remember about that?
Well, we had just done the Golden Eagle Awards. So I don't know if you had heard of those, the
Yes.
Golden Eagle Awards.
Yes, of course.
Awards to Latinos.
Nosotros. The
Yeah,
organization
right
Nosotros.
into nosotros. Okay. We had just done that the night before. We flew out. We're like jet lag. We're like desvelado, everything. We get there. We get on stage. We're about to play with James Brown, the Spinners, on and on and on. And what it is, it's the Cool Jazz Festival. being held at the Houston Astrodome. And we got up there and we delivered. We just delivered. We just in our tired state. And then we're going, wow, look at this place. We're in the Houston Astrodome.
Amazing. It happened really fast.
Yes, it was quick.
American Music Awards, man. You guys are, were you playing live or you weren't lip syncing, were you?
I believe we were lip syncing.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
Oh, you did a good job of it. So that must have been pretty heavy duty doing the American Music Awards. I can only imagine all the celebrities in the audience and backstage. Pretty heady experience. How would you think? How'd you
Oh,
feel?
yes. Michael Jackson right behind us. Everybody who was big at that time in 1981. Everybody that had a big recording.
Did you feel extra nervous?
I was honored. I just felt like, humble, very humble. Just be sitting there.
With that kind of audience and national TV, that was big for you, new for you guys. It had to be pretty
Oh,
hardcore,
yeah.
but you guys looked very relaxed and it looked really cool.
That's one of the biggest, yeah.
So, what other TV shows did you do at that time?
Well, I believe we had signed the contract in December of 1980. And right away, Mike Douglas, Tony, and the Captain and Tennille, but it was Tony Tennille show. Merv Griffin, Soul Train,
Wow.
and then American Bandstand. Let's see, Solid Gold. Remember Dionne Warwick used to host that program?
Yeah.
Tremendous dancers. And then subsequently, we go on the 30 city tour. Our first stop is this was after a concert in Fresno and then a small one in San Diego. We end up in Dade County, Florida. Miami-Dade College, something like that. And we're going to play with Miami Sound Machine.
Wow.
And they open up the show for us. Never forget that one.
Was that the same tour with the Houston Astrodome?
This was before it. This was like the beginning. The Houston Astrodome, it came, that was a little bit later than the
So
tour.
tell me about the first tour. What other highlights were on the first tour?
The first tour, we go to San Antonio, Texas. We play with Kool and the Gang. That's a big show. That's like Lincoln's birthday. We play Carnegie Hall in that same month, that 17th. That's still going to be the biggest.
Well, talk about that. The
So
experience.
Carnegie Hall, we get there. We're going to get the tour of the city. We know where we're going to stay. The hotel's not too far from Carnegie Hall. Kind of walk across the street.
New York City, baby.
And we discover everything about New York City that you had heard about.
Good and bad, huh?
I won't mention too much, but
Mhm.
we're all able to take our wives or significant others. We're doing a sound check. We're getting ready for the show. There's nervousness. There's anxiety a little bit. There's people playing too loud. And all you had to do is just soften your volume because that's
The acoustics.
the acoustics of that theater are amazing. And we find out that we were told that we're going to play after Mongo Santa Maria. Mongo Santa Maria opens up the show for us.
Wow.
And I just remember a lot of people rushing the stage. And, the embracing in East L.A.
Okay, tell me about a year later you played at the Ritz in New York City. What was that like?
That was nice. Back in New York City, Greenwich Village this time. I remember a big cavernous place. It wasn't probably as significant as Carnegie Hall in terms of like the feeling that you
Right.
had,
Of
but
course.
you knew you were in New York City, and you were at a different venue.
And Ruben Blades was there attending the show.
And he wanted to hang out with Steve Salas.
I heard that he really loves Steve, man. He was all over him,
He
hanging
was
out.
hanging around with Steve, schmoozing the whole thing.
I assume they may have partied together. You never know.
Well, I'm sure there was. Yeah, he might have joined. He probably was at the party, schmoozing more at the party than
Yeah.
at the actual concert.
Were there two major tours, or were there more than two?
The other tours weren't as extensive.
Was the first one the biggest?
Yeah, the first one was the biggest. That was 30 cities.
Okay. So tell me like some of the highlights of the tours in terms of who you might be on the bill with.
We knew we were going to be with R&B acts that were big. That was the category we were put in.
Yes.
Rhythm and blues. Just to have Kool and the Gang play one show with us, and then realize they were going to be at the next show with Zap.
Now, would you say that you played mainly on the bill with black artists on those?
Yes, black artists.
So was it mainly black audiences?
No. Apparently the hit parade, I still call it the hit parade, was appealing to everybody because a lot of these bands were getting a lot more attention. They weren't pigeonholed as just an R&B category.
They were on the Billboard charts, the regular charts.
Yes.
So would you
exactly.
say it was
But
mixed between black, white, and Latino, the crowds?
I'm going to say there was a lot of Latino, probably more Latino and white than black
Oh, really?
in some
That's
cases.
interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
And especially in Texas. Texas was more Latino.
So how long did you play with Tierra overall, straight through that time?
From the time I joined them to the time I left,
Yeah.
I'll say almost 7.5 years, 1977 to 1985.
Okay. And were you on any other albums? Were you on Together Again, the follow-up album?
I was on that one, yes.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I have it here. Let me look at it. Yeah, there you are.
That was a white zoot suit, right?
Well, I just see these shiny pants and this black shirt. On the front, you're wearing a zoot suit, a white
Yes.
zoot suit. On the
And then the other
back,
one.
you're wearing the other thing.
Well, usually I would wear one outfit and then I'd go off stage and change it to the zoot suit.
Mhm. And did you do it looks like you did a new version of Barrio Suite, right?
Yeah, they decided to. They wanted to do that.
And of course, another big single they had was Lala Means
Yeah.
I Love You. It was a
Yeah.
minor hit, right?
Yeah,
And you did a version of Tequila?
tequila. Rudy wanted to do tequila with a sort of a 1940s drum thing at the beginning.
Oh, yeah. So that was your run with Tierra during the heyday. You played with Tierra other times in the future, right?
Well, when Steve decided to leave his brother or he got fired,
Oh.
he started the Voice of Tierra project.
Mhm.
And there were two Tierras.
Yeah, I think he called it Steve Salas and the original Tierra or
The
something.
original Voice of Tierra.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into that one too
No.
much, but
No.
I'll say that a recording was produced that was not distributed
Mhm.
called Directions.
Okay.
And I thought that recording, Steve Salas could have become a solo artist on his own there.
Well, I believe that did come out later as a solo record for him, right? I have it.
And he never, well, was no distribution.
Right.
No distribution.
So in other words, you were playing with Steve Salas' version of Tierra at that time.
So it was Steve Salas, the original Voice of Tierra. Rudy had fired the drummer, Danny Santillan. He became part of that.
Okay.
Ray Carrion became the guitar player. Eventually, Rocky Padilla became part of that. It showed kind of that sibling rivalry, but that, wait a minute, I'm tired of being told what to do. This is Steve telling his brother.
Yeah.
And also telling people, well, you're with me, you're not with me. And I'm out of the band, but I'm being asked to come back. And Rudy actually is trying to bring me in. So it was a little bit of a tug of war to try to get me maybe to join Tierra again. Sibling rivalry is always going to be kind of the reason why they don't. I used to want to get their heads and go bang.
Right.
I never fought with my brother like that. I never got into it. But then again, the love. Steve made this comment after his brother died. Well, how come you guys were always? Because we loved each other, and yes, you can love each other maybe too much. That's what he said. But I just I didn't like the idea of being with one former Tierra member who was a founder, and Steve knew it. And I would tell him, Steve, why are you settling for crumb jobs? You're settling for just. And of course, Rudy and George Aguilar was still representing, who had been Steve's manager, right? Until Steve was let go. But I never looked at it as a total firing, because Steve would step aside and another singer would come in,
Right.
take his place. So sometimes I couldn't figure it out, but I it's funny how I heard things about Tierra after I left, and I'm going, why do I have to still hear about Tierra? But I would hear these things from different people, almost like they want me to choose sides, and I didn't like that.
And once again, today, there's kind of two Tierras. There's his son, David Salas, is Tierra Legacy.
Yes.
The guys that played with Rudy the last 20 years or so. So that's going on too. But
yeah, they call that also Joanna's Tierra.
Right. So that's another thing that's going on. But we don't want to get into any legal issues or anything like that.
No.
We're taking sides. It's just
none of our business.
That's the way it is. Have you played with the Legacy Band?
Yes, I've been playing with the Tierra Legacy Band now since 2020. I would say beginning of 2023, about there.
So and the beat goes on,
And yeah, I honor Rudy and Steve by doing it. I give a little speech. David wants me to say something about on Together when they started in the beginning. I say a few words about the success of Carnegie Hall, and I mentioned thank you, Rudy and Steve, for allowing me to be part of your project. And David really, he looks to me because he knew that I knew his, and I'm the older guy. I knew his father and his uncle, very closely. I was literally part of the Salas family at one point.
Now his father was a great visual artist, right?
Painter. Oh yes, he was.
Yeah, so it's the whole Tierra story is a very complicated thing. There've been so many members coming and going, and then there've been a couple of divisions, but it's a great legacy. Always a great band, and Steve and Rudy, were the core of it, and
yes, they were founders.
Yeah. So when did you start playing with the Midniters?
The Midniters came about 1991. Jimmy and Romeo, I think they both called me almost at the same time and said, "Hey, would you like to be?" Because I think Larry Rendon had stepped out. Now that I recall, I think Larry, I don't know if his wife was sick. What? He steps out. I'm asked to come in. Bobby Loya is playing trumpet now with the Midniters. And Romeo, of course, the flugelbone, but he's still playing the piano. And I'm wondering who the singer is, and it's not Willie G. At that time, it was Jerry Salas.
Oh, really?
Which could have been like, throw this band together, get the lead singer, do the job. And yet, at the same time, they're telling me that there's a new singer coming in named King Charlie Coda.
Right. Now, what year is this you're talking about?
1991, I go in and do that one show in Madeira with Jerry Salas. And Bobby Loya's on, and of course, and Romeo and Jimmy. I think Aaron was playing drums, Aaron Ballesteros. And then the next year, 92, Charlie Coda comes in and becomes the lead singer.
So how long would you say Jerry Salas had that singing position?
I don't know. I'm only going by that one performance that
Could have even been one, huh?
it could have been just a couple or maybe three or.
Well, of
Who
course,
knows?
he had already been El Chicano's lead singer and
Yes.
is once again. So,
And Charles Coda stayed a long time.
yeah. And then did Hank Castro come back in at some point?
We were doing a show in City of Commerce. It was a Cinco de Mayo thing, Bristol Park, I think.
Mm-hmm.
There was talk that Willie G was going to show up. King Charles, they call him King Charles. That was his stage name. He's kind of nervous. He's looking around a bit because of the rumor that Willie G is going to come on stage. And when Willie G came on stage, I never saw a man move so fast. He got out that stage quick. And then Willie came back. I call it the 5-year plan. He came back with the Midniters.
Well,
on
Willie
the 5-year
G.
plan.
Well, Willie G. I always equated to Willie G. is to the Midniters what Mick Jagger is to the Rolling Stones. I mean, he was the guy, and a lot of great singers came later, and they're great, but he's the one that's the face of the Midniters and was the guy in the heyday.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people, when they go see the Midniters, they go, "Hey, where's Willie G?" And as a result, they won't go see the Midniters because they don't want to see Hank Castro. They want to see Willie G.
Did you play with the Midniters a lot when they had Greg Esparza as lead vocalist?
Yeah, I was there when the first.
He's an excellent singer. He did a nice
I
job.
I think he is. I think Hank though has that essence of that old crooner, maybe closer to Willie actually. But yeah, Greg was very good. I like Greg.
Yeah, me too. And Hank's back now with the Midniters now.
Yeah.
Another wild. The Midnighter story is also very, convoluted and complicated, but great.
He's got some stories.
Who's that?
He's got some stories, Greg.
Oh, yeah, I know.
About his time.
Oh, yeah. He was with him for a long time, almost 20 years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, quite a long time.
Yeah. So I remember one time you came out to visit me in Palm Springs. I think it was in the 90s. I forgot what triggered it, but you came out, we hung out all day, and you left a cassette tape with me of an interview you did in New York on one of those tours during the heyday of Tierra. And I don't know if you just left it by accident. You may have. So I had it for years and I never lost it. And eventually I digitized it and I put it on my website. It's on there now, right?
That's an interview that was done at UC Santa Barbara.
Oh, was it?
California.
But it was during the heyday, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, it's a great interview.
You still have it. Great.
No, I'm telling you, I digitized it and it's on my website. Did you know that?
Oh, I got to see your website, man.
Yeah, it's on there. It's on there.
Now that I'm in the 21st century a little more.
If you go to markguerrero.com and you go to, I think it's called Radio and Miscellaneous Soundbites page, scroll down, you'll find it. It's Bobby Navarrete interview.
markguerrero.com.
Yeah.
And then scroll down to.
Go down to Radio and Miscellaneous Soundbites.
Radio and Miscellaneous Soundbites. Okay.
Let me go to it myself.
Yeah, I want to see everything you've done.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me go here. Okay. Radio. Yeah, there it is. Radio and Soundbites.
Okay.
And just scroll down to where it says miscellaneous radio shows and soundbites. And at the bottom, Bobby Navarrete of Tierra, KCSB-FM, Santa Barbara radio interview, 1981.
That's it.
And you click on it, you can hear it, man.
Okay.
It's 19 minutes and 54 seconds. So see, it was a happy accident. You left it at my house because it's online today because of that.
That was Radio Chicano, I guess, UC Santa Barbara.
Oh, okay. But you were very hyped up and talkative
I was hyped.
because you were right there you were in the center of the hurricane there.
I was
The
hyped. The way to put it.
Naturally hyped, probably, right?
Yeah.
So I
A
remember
little bit
that.
of mota.
Maybe that mellows you out. Then you came into my gig. I have a picture of it on my website. Uh, and you came and you jammed with my band in
I sure did.
2008. Do you remember that?
I remember that.
There's a picture of that on my website as well. Uh, and I'll show you that page later. And I'm going to put the picture up on this interview too, so you'll see it.
Okay.
So now I did attend that tribute to Tierra at East L.A. College a year or two ago. Remember that?
Yeah.
And you performed with the Midniters and with the Tower of Power tribute band, right?
Oh, that tribute band, yeah.
What's the name of that band?
Hip Street.
Really good, man. Really, really good.
They are good.
And you were very prominent up there, kind of singing.
Yeah, and you know what happened was they didn't have they wanted me to sing the backgrounds. And I think it's because they had somebody who was going to play the sax take my parts.
Mhm.
But they wanted me to sing background. So I was just kind of more like dancing around and singing.
I know. I was surprised. I'd never seen you do that,
Yeah, I was doing background.
Yeah.
Now, you heard about Tony Banda, the fundraiser?
No.
Well, the story about Tony Banda is he's in ICU, praying.
Right now as you speak?
Well, the story sounds like he was in ICU. I'm sure he's not there anymore, but something about his heart, too. Beside the kidney, because he's been on kidney dialysis a long time. He needs a donor. Well, then the thing about ICU, the heart, and now there's a fundraiser, and I think it's Chico that's planning this July 7th. So I don't know what condition Tony's in.
Well, I didn't know that. Well, I know that
Yeah.
Sadly his brother Ramon passed away a few years ago.
I remember that.
Great guy, great percussionist and musician.
So, pray for Tony. I hope, I'd like to go see him, but the story is you can't really go in and see him. See, I don't know if he's at home, if he's, I don't know, that's all I know. But I was asked to play a reunion of Hip Street, Tower Power tribute band, for that show. Because Tony played with them.
Well, Tony and Ramon Banda played for years with Poncho Sanchez. They were great.
Yes, they did.
And with David Torres.
They were swinging.
Yeah, I heard him. Believe me, you couldn't sit down. And Tony played with Tierra, with Rudy Salas Tierra for
That's right.
a few years, the last few years, after Steve Falomar passed.
Steve Falomar.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know this about
Steve Falomar was with Tierra for 30 years.
Yeah.
The longest bass player.
Wow. But again, we're all getting to that age where we're starting to lose a lot of our friends and fellow musicians.
I've lost quite a few, and then a lot of them are sick, of course.
My good friend Chan Romero just passed a couple of days ago.
Oh,
yeah. But for those watching this show 20 years from now, we're talking about April 24th, 2024, we're doing this. So, because you're mentioning Tony Banda and ICU, this thing will be up for years on YouTube. They just did a benefit for Marcos Loya, who's having some issues.
I was there.
Yeah, I wanted to go. I couldn't make it.
I played with two groups.
Was it
a reunion of Khalifa? It's the band he played with.
Yes.
And then I played with Louis, put an all-star thing all together. But Poncho played with Son Mayor.
So many musicians, so many people showed up, huh?
Oh, it was a great actors, actresses. Paul Rodriguez.
Culture Clash.
Culture Clash.
So all in all, encapsulating, so you grew up in East LA, you were in several East LA bands and a couple of iconic bands. What was your experience just growing up and playing music in East LA?
You know that our parents, were very protective. So they had to always meet, especially my mother had to meet the mothers of the other musicians or the musicians we were going to play with. Who's this? That's Bumpy. Bumpy was a singer from the Baritones. Robert Deanna was the drummer. Uh, Richard and I saw something beyond just reading the music in the band program, because it was like lay the chart down, bam. Tozier, our band director, one of them, the swing band, the concert band. All of a sudden, we're starting to hear about the garage bands more, and our father being a little nicer about letting us go beyond the fence. I call it the fence.
So you're just saying that it took a while for you to get free to get part of the scene?
And that we wanted to musically tune in and join in with these bands. Mostly your musicians, but there were a lot of them that also were in the school band programs at Wilson or Roosevelt or
Right.
most of our little garage band setups were like Ramona Gardens, El Sereno, City Terrace, Lincoln Heights, a little bit into Alhambra, but we're right there in Boyle Heights by the hospital, the general hospital they call it that time, and we're liking the thing of learning the music from the radio.
Sure.
Radio's influencing us tremendously.
That's where we learned everything, right off the records, off the radio.
Yeah. And of course, if you play with the dance, you're going to see a lot of nice looking women. So, fringe benefit.
Absolutely.
I got into dancing too at an early age. I was always dancing. I was dancing on stage or just, dancing to the sock hop, all those things they used to have. So I was into the dance thing and knew how people would dance to the music, and sort of like I tuned in. As you're playing, you're saying, "Hey, look at that! They're dancing out there because we're playing so good."
Yeah.
Dance fans, all that.
Yeah, it was a great scene, man. Perfect.
It was a great time.
Yeah.
Too bad the kids. I really feel for the kids today.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's not like that anymore. So you wound up teaching in some East L.A. schools like Belvedere Junior High School in the music program.
Yes. Well, Fuzzy, you know who Fuzzy is, right?
Yeah.
Adolfo Martinez.
Village Scholars.
Yes.
He was at Garfield when I was there.
He was at Garfield. He was the department chairperson of the music program at Belvedere.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Didn't know.
I was the 5th music teacher that was hired, thanks to Vicky Castro, the principal. And Fuzzy ran. He ran the orchestra. Greg Garcia? He ran the band. He was trying to put a swing band together a little bit, I think, but it was really Fuzzy that put the mariachi program together.
Oh wow!
And it became a very famous junior high mariachi. And it was unheard of to find 5 music. That was the way it was when I went to school. There was at least 5 music teachers. But I was the one that was like getting the kids who weren't sure if they wanted to go into the music, and then I would kind of screen them out. I would see if they really were going to be I'm going to feed them into the program a little bit. Or why don't you guys try art, drawing, painting, things like that.
That's cool. And you mentioned earlier that off camera that you taught at Fremont High School for like 5 years or something?
About 4.5 years. There was a thing called the incentive program to encourage teachers to take an assignment in the ghetto or the barrio. I said I would take it. I was driving from Baldwin Park all the way to Fremont. And
at Fremont, was there a different demographic, like more black students?
Yeah, 65% black and 35% Latino, but the Latinos were starting to come in because of the thing in El Salvador.
Oh yeah.
And so there was Central American kids coming in, not just the Mexican kids. And they needed bilingual I was bilingual, so.
Hmm.
But the band program, the choir, almost all black. And I remember we played when Jesse Jackson was running for president,
Mhm.
and I took the marching band out, took them out to the 40-yard line, and we just started playing my banner.
Cool.
And who do I see playing? Who's about to play on the stage? Dr. Bobby Rodriguez.
Hey, so we're currently working on a project, this Art Brambilla record we're working on, and we're kind of halfway through it, and it's kind of fun working with you again after all these years. And we got a lot of cool East LA veterans on the sessions,
Oh, that's great.
guys from
Yeah.
Yaqui and Jerry Gonzalez, and it's been a lot of fun
That was great. We're
recording.
not done yet, I know.
No, at least one more session. So I guess that's about it. Anything else you want to mention before we move, say goodbye?
Well, just to mention, Mark, that I'm glad that there's a documentarian like you who's taken an interest in the history of East Los Angeles arts and culture, and of course, the legacy of you with your father and family. Uh, I'm very happy that someone like you is doing this.
Well, I'm passionate about it.
Yeah.
I can't get enough of it. I want to make sure all these stories get preserved, moving forward.
Yes.
After we're gone, these stories will be there. Otherwise, they disappear.
Sure.
So, man, thank you for doing the show. I appreciate it, Bobby.
Thank you for being patient with all this setup and
It finally worked out.
yes.
Okay, man. Well, I'll see you at the next session. It should be in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Take care, Bobby.
God bless you.
You too.